saying
The
it's
first
about
signs of
18
life from
months.
before this big eruption
We
had been
need
found,
to do
and the search was
safety and
on to reveal proof of a
efficacy
culture that could link the
and
islands to the great
build
civilizations of Crete and
manufacturing.
Atlantis. The answer was unearthed in
And they're
1966 by an
different for
American
the
archaeologist
different
named James Mavor
constructs.
Jr.
And so we'll abandon,
Mavor assembled a team to search the
it'll be
island
a
for
few
signs of ancient
billion
artifacts
dollars.
here on
There's
cobbled street.
trillions of
At their very
dollars.
first
That's
attempt,
1,000
Mavor's team
times
had discovered
more.
an extraordinary town, perfectly preserved in the ash of a
Trillions of
volcanic
dollars
eruption.
We are talking about a brilliant
lost
culture, brilliant civilization with very
economically.
advanced
It is
technology,
worth
interface,
it
and special
in
building technology.
normal government
The discovery was
procurement
hailed as one of the most important
processes and
finds in classical
understanding
archaeology.
which are the right
The town
seven.
remained substantially intact.
In a few
Just like the
months,
city of
those
Pompeii
may
in Italy,
kick
volcanic
in.
ash had
But
filled the
our
city and sealed it from the
foundation,
elements. Its
we
contents had been
can
preserved
get
for more
that
than 30
bootstrap
centuries.
and get it
The huge task of
going,
uncovering the town continues today,
and,
with every inch of ash that is removed, new
save
clues to the
months,
civilization that was
because
here are
every
revealed.
month
And just as
counts.
described in the legend of Atlantis, we see
Things
engineering
can
skills that were sophisticated
reopen
way beyond their time.
When I first came
if
to
we do the
Akapiri, I
right
was
things
expecting
in the
something rather
summer,
simple. But then
but
I
it
realized
won't
this town was
be
made of multi-story buildings.
completely
And then
normal.
we
You'll still be very worried. We may decide masks are important, although right now they're in short supply for health workers, so people should not go and hoard those. But the capacity of that can be brought up, so it may be something that, like China today, everybody who's walking around is wearing one of those. So we'll have a lot of unusual measures until we get the world vaccinated. 7 billion people, that's a tall order, but it is where we need to get to, despite a lot of things in between now and then, to minimize the damage.
Gates openly talks about vaccinating everyone on the planet before life can return to, quote, normal. And it's not just Gates saying this. His little buddy Fauci has also implied this. The Australian Prime Minister has stated that life will not return to normal until there is a vaccine. Johnson & Johnson, who participated in the UN Gates Event 201 pandemic simulation, is preparing mass vaccines. Denmark has mandated vaccines through an emergency order, and in Italy you may have to have a COVID pass to prove you have a marker of immunity, just to return to work after this lockdown. And right here, published on MIT News, we see MIT engineers have developed a way to store medical information underneath the skin using a quantum dot dye that is delivered along with a vaccine by a microneedle patch. The dye, which is invisible to the naked eye, can be read later using a smartphone. Now, this will not just be used for medical records. This will be used to incorporate all of the aspects of your life, again, tying back into the digital ID, which is going to include all of your financial information, your credit, your social credit, your health, your medical, your location. You're going to need it to travel, to work, to buy, to sell, everything. And it's all going to be tapped into this new digital financial system. In my opinion, you can see it doesn't take a scientist to put together 2 + 2 + 2. I mean, what are your thoughts? You let me know if I'm way off on this. Now, this new digital financial system is going to, of course, be rolled out of the ashes of this global and health economic crisis. It's the perfect plan, and it's been in the works for a long time.
More now of our special coverage here tonight, life in the U.S. in 10 years' time. By that time, there may be all kinds of new ways to safeguard and identify all those things that make each of us unique, our faces, even our fingerprints, even our eyes. Here now with more on the future of technology, NBC's Tom Costello.
The year is 2017. You're rushed to a hospital unconscious with no ID or medical history, but thanks to a microchip under your skin, it's all there. Science fiction 20 years ago, but a biometric reality today.
And now there's a company called BiChip, and according to their site, BiChip is the first and only distance-readable human microchip with internet connectivity. BiChip has a unique ID for general identification and can store your medical data, driver's license, and passport. It can also be used as an alternative payment system, integratable with cryptocurrency wallets. BiChip has also created a crypto token that will be implemented in the microchips as the only payment system. You can already buy BiChip tokens here. Already have a microchip in your hand? Activate it here. And this type of technology is already being implemented.
There's an interesting conversation happening right now on our KARE 11 Facebook page about microchipping. I'm not talking about microchipping your cat or your dog. I'm talking about microchipping you.
When Elias Brotberger goes to work, he doesn't need ID. And he doesn't need money. In fact, much of what he needs to get through the day is hidden right there, just below the surface, in his hand.
You like to touch it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, weird. Yeah, it's like a grain of rice.
Yeah, a grain of rice.
Embedded in his hand is a microchip that serves as his keys, his ID, and his wallet.
Yeah, it's all in the chip. So I use it like to get around the building.
Buy snacks.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's buy some snacks. So I can't open it.
No.
Okay.
So what I need to do is I need to first blip my chip, and it will log me in, and from there I get access to the fridge.
As we can see here, Bill Gates says that digital currencies could empower the poorest, because I'm sure we can all agree that this is Bill's mission in life. And what he is talking about is the same things that the United Nations and the central banks have been talking about, and that is integrating what they call the unbanked or underbanked into the new digital financial system of control. According to this article, there are 2.5 billion people on the planet who are not currently in the banking system. This is a huge untapped market of people that they want to tax, regulate, control, and vaccinate.
So our foundation is engaged in projecting what's going to go on, the modeling. And our partner IHME is, telling each state what they should think about in terms of ventilators and capacity. Further on out, the work we're doing now to find a therapeutic, a drug to reduce the disease, to cut the deaths down. We're hopeful that even in 6 months, some of those will have been approved. But the ultimate solution, the only thing that really lets us go back completely to normal and feel good about sitting in a stadium with lots of other people, is to create a vaccine and not just take care of our country, but take that vaccine out to the global population, and so that we have vast immunity, and this thing, no matter what, isn't going to spread in large numbers.
And we can already see that the United Nations has already adopted cryptocurrencies and also blockchain technology to, quote, meet its sustainable development goals. And they are already using it to track food supply chains, like pigs, for example. Now, they are also already using blockchain to track refugees. So why wouldn't they use it to track you or me or the rest of humanity? And this brings us to FIDO, which stands for Fast Identity Online. According to their website, the FIDO Alliance is an open industry association with a focused mission: authentication standards to help reduce the world's over-reliance on passwords. Now, if you remember back in like 2005, Bill Gates said passwords are dead, and everyone's like, oh, what's he talking about? Well, in other words, they are, and they already have been working on biometrics for some time. We can already see this integrated into our daily lives just by using our fingerprints or our facial recognition to unlock our smartphones. Let's take a quick look at their board members. We have Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Visa, and many others. Their sponsor members: Chase, Fidelity, Huawei, Netflix, SoftBank, Twitter, Verizon, in addition to various governments including the US, Germany, Australia, the UK, China, and others. And right here we also see that FIDO has partnered with the United Nations and its International Telecommunications Union. And it's interesting to note that FIDO was created in 2012, the same year that the United Nations ITU, the telecommunications division, launched its International Mobile Telecommunications System, or IMT, for 2020 and Beyond initiative, setting the stage for 5G rollout in 2020. This was their mission all along. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you see what I'm trying to lay out here for you. The United Nations has been quarterbacking the rollout of 5G the entire time since 2012, and everyone is on board. All of those FIDO members I mentioned previously, and wouldn't you know it, if you take a look at the ITU, the telecommunication body for the United Nations, they just happened to present Bill Gates with a special award back in 2015.
I'm honored that the International Telecommunications Union has chosen me for this prestigious award. Well, unfortunately, I'm not able to join you in person for the 150th anniversary celebration. I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about how your work contributes to a breakthrough that will improve the lives of the world's poorest over the next 15 years and beyond. That breakthrough, which Melinda and I highlighted in our annual foundation letter this year, is the use of digital banking to give the poor more control of their assets and help them transform their lives. Historically, people at the lowest income levels have had to make difficult choices about how to use their limited financial resources. That's partly because they don't have access to banks that can help them use those resources effectively. As mobile digital technologies spread to even the poorest and most remote regions of the world, we have an opportunity to reach this underserved population and bring it into the global economy with expanded access to savings accounts, lines of credit, and other financial services. For their part, financial service providers can profit from serving these customers because the marginal cost of processing digital transactions is near zero. In other words, these technologies can make the expansion of financial access a winning proposition for everyone. Now, for the world to seize this opportunity, we need the innovation and expertise of the global telecommunications industry. And that's where the ITU can play a central role. By encouraging greater technical standardization in the digital financial services sector, by improving the quality, reliability, and security of services in low-income countries, by providing a better coordination between telecommunications authorities and financial service regulators, and by advocating simpler, more intuitive mobile technologies to ensure wider use by individuals who may be illiterate or unfamiliar with digital systems.
Now, to further illustrate the UN's major role in the implementation of 5G, all we have to do is look at this World Economic Forum white paper. And of course, the World Economic Forum falls under the United Nations, and they were both at the Event 201, the pandemic simulation. Now, this white paper is titled Impact of 5G, Creating New Value Across Industry and Society. The very first paragraph is very telling. The fourth industrial revolution offers the opportunity for diverse sectors to enhance their competitiveness and contribution to regional economies, while supporting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This industrial revolution is powered by both established and emerging technologies, including the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, advanced data analytics, robotic process automation, augmented reality, 3D printing, and drones. One key enabler that allows these technologies to realize their full potential is connectivity. Now, this document also contains language on digital banking and digital wallets and is directly tied to the UN's 2030 Agenda and the UN's Agenda 21, which is why I state that I believe that what we are seeing right now is directly connected to my report I published just before this whole coronavirus situation unfolded, titled The UN and Central Banks, a Rockefeller-Rothschild Coup. Now, please go watch this. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to leave a link below. In addition to my very first video on my channel, The Digital Banking Arms Race is here. Now, there is clearly an agenda tied to this crisis. Understanding this agenda will help us to understand the current situation. And I believe what we are seeing now is all connected. All of the events leading up to this crisis, all of the same players involved in every instance, everything from the Rockefeller lockstep pandemic outline a decade ago to Event 201 to the UN's climate change agenda. They have built a technocracy, which is the scientific dictatorship that Eisenhower warned us on, this very same speech where he warned us about the military-industrial complex. In my personal opinion, this is not about money. The central banks are on board with this program and they print the money out of thin air. This is about control. And when you look and dive into what these social engineers really believe is the greatest threat to humanity, it's us. It's you, it's me, it's the public. It's population growth. They are eugenicists at their core, and they have built the ultimate system of control. And they have been incrementally preparing us for this, for the Internet of Things, for the Internet of Value, for smart cities, to run on the 5G and the artificial intelligence. This is why I believe that this outbreak is not an accident. And at the end of the day, the US and China are on the same page. So it's not China's fault, it's not America's fault. That's simply a distractionary tactic of divide and conquer. But don't take my word for it. There are a lot of people out there, a lot of great researchers and journalists doing some fantastic work. James Corbett is one of them. He has some amazing, valuable information on his site. And I recommend that you watch Why Big Oil Conquered the World. This will help you better understand this eugenics global governance operation, as well as his report on China and the New World Order. Whitney Webb just came out with a fantastic report about Dark Winter, which shows how this exact scenario goes all the way back and was played out all the way back to the days of 9/11 and much more. So many others out there doing fantastic work. Richie Allen, David Icke, David Cohen, who is a doctor, Dr. David Cohen, who's raised some very valid points regarding the health impacts of 5G that everyone needs to check out. And so many others, I can't possibly name all of you. Now, I think that it's very important for all of us not to get caught up in the mindset that there's only one right answer about the coronavirus outbreak, only one right explanation regarding the source. Is it 5G? Is it a bioweapon? Nobody really knows. Is it possible that it could be a cocktail of many things? Sure, absolutely. Is it possible that 5G is making people sick? Yeah, it's possible. Just look at the negative health effects admittedly attributed to Wi-Fi, for example, and cell phone radiation. They say don't put your phone in your pocket next to your reproductive organs for a reason. Could this virus be used as cover to help conceal some of that? It absolutely is possible. Anything is possible right now. Now, could the coronavirus really be getting people sick? Yeah, of course, absolutely. Could there be multiple strains of this virus with different degrees of mortality? Yes, absolutely. This could explain why when you see countries like Iran are being hit so hard, much harder than other countries. Is there possible strains? Yes, after all, a global health pandemic would be the perfect cover to release a bioweapon, in my opinion. I'm just saying that we must keep an open mind and go where the evidence takes us. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Based on how these operations go in the past, they're multifaceted, they're meant to achieve multiple goals, and there's multi-layers in them. And in my opinion, from everything I've seen, this is a coordinated and planned operation. And the more I dig, the more confirmation I see. Now, remember way back at the beginning of this report when I said, remember the year 2017? Well, in 2017, Trump made a cryptic comment about the calm before the storm.
You guys know what this represents? Well, maybe it's the calm before the storm.
What's the storm?
Could be the calm before the storm.
Now, people speculated about this at the time, what the president meant by this, and many thought that it was perhaps connected to future military action since Trump was with top military leaders. That would make sense, right? But it's interesting to note that this is also around the same time that Trump was threatening to pull out of the UN. Remember that? He was going to pull out of the United Nations. He was threatening to cut funding to the United Nations. He was threatening to cut funding to the World Health Organization and threatening to cut funding to the CDC. Now, just a few months prior to this, Dr. Tony Fauci also made this cryptic statement.
Given, as you heard from the introduction, that I have been around for a while and have had the opportunity and the privilege and the pleasure of serving in 5 administrations, I thought I would bring that perspective to the topic today, is the issue of pandemic preparedness. And if there's one message that I want to leave with you today, based on my experience, and you'll see that in a moment, is that there is no question that there will be a challenge to the coming administration in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that, but also there will be a surprise outbreak. There will be a surprise outbreak. There will be a surprise outbreak. And I hope by the end of my relatively short presentation, you will understand why history the history of the last 32 years that I've been the director of NIAID will tell the next administration that there's no doubt in anyone's mind that they will be faced with the challenges that their predecessors were faced with.
Now again, this is just speculation, but considering all the information that I've covered in my previous report titled Coronavirus Follow the Money, the CDC and Fauci and Bill Gates were all warning, or not, I don't want to say threatening, but they were all warning basically of a possible pandemic if their funding was cut. Now it's no smoking gun, but it is extremely interesting in my opinion, and it should be highlighted, taken into consideration. Now, for those of you who stuck around to the end, I have a little treat for you. I recently did a poll on Twitter asking people what concerns them more, North Korea, Iran, or Bill Gates. More than 2,200 people voted and participated in this online Twitter poll, and a whopping 88.8% said Bill Gates was a much larger concern to them over North Korea and Iran. So what does that tell you? Now, please be sure to share this report, share it far and wide, help to get this information out there. You can follow my work right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and like. You can also follow me on BitChute because they could take down this YouTube channel at any time. I'm honestly shocked that it's still up, that they haven't, because I have not been pulling any punches. I'm just telling it as it is. I'm not, anyways, you guys know what's up. You can also follow me on Twitter and Activist Post. Stay tuned for more. I'm Spiro. Thanks for watching.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
There's a need for a new world order, but it has different characteristics in different parts of the world.
Never before has a new world order had to be assembled from so many different perceptions or on so global a scale. Nor has any previous order had to combine the attributes of the historic balance of power system with global democratic opinion and the exploding technology of the contemporary period.
After 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order.
I think its task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity. It isn't just a crisis.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law.
So, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, a new world is emerging. It is a new world order with significantly different and radically new challenges.
Lower level than the level of, I hope, than the level of 100,000. So we're going to see. We're going to have to. You can never do anything about the people that lost their loved ones and lost their friends, and I mean the great friendships. And I'm not sure a lot of people will ever be the same. But I think our country, from an economic standpoint, will end up being stronger than ever. We have tremendous stimulus. We have tremendous stimulus plans. We have things in the works that are going to really, I think, fire the country. I think that what's going to happen is we're going to have a big bounce rather than a small bounce. But we will be back. And I think, honestly, I think our country is going to be back from an economic standpoint. Again, you can never replace the people that were lost, and to their families. Certainly, you can never do a thing like that, but we will have succeeded in many ways, hopefully keeping the number way below our minimum numbers, and also from an economic standpoint. You know, we met with the mental health people today, and that takes this is taking a tremendous toll mentally on a lot of people. And I think we're going to open up strong. I think we're going to open up very successfully. And I'd like to say even more successfully than before. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Oil is trading today at about $23 a barrel in New York. Where would you want to see the price? Do you want it at $30, $40, $50 a barrel?
Well, I want to see it where there's a certain market, but I also don't want to see it where people have no idea. You know, we'll be opening up areas for storage of oil, massive areas for storage of oil, because oil today is not selling. And what happened is the virus knocked out 40% of the market. Immediately, you know that, you know the number, 40%. Now, there was a lot of oil, but it was very controllable. All of a sudden, they lost 40%. You look at the roads, you look at the car, you look at what's going on. There's nobody driving. There's no reason for it right now. That'll start coming back. But we are storing millions of barrels of oil that nobody thought would even be possible. Frankly, ships turned out to be a good business for some people because they're filling up tankers, sending them out to sea and not saying where to go. They're just sitting out there loaded up with oil. So we want to save our energy in this country. We want to make sure that our energy companies, businesses, and employees, workers, remain strong. So that's how I'm involved, and I think that's going to happen. So right now, if you look, you're probably talking 23, 25. If they announce a deal, we can get it up. We need a minimum number so the companies don't go out of business, so they're not going to lay off all of these energy workers who are important to our country. And, you know, we're now energy independent. We could do something where we only used our oil. But I think the long-term benefit is to be able to just go with the market, and it's going to work out. It's all going to work out. If you looked at 3 weeks ago, as you know, because we talked about it, 3 weeks ago and 2 weeks ago, this was catastrophic. I think it's really hitting bottom, and I think that, I mean, we've had a bottom, but now at $23 and $25 and probably heading up. At the same time, we save our energy, and we also produce great, cheap energy, and we save our jobs. Yeah.
I want to ask you about the Paycheck Protection Program, because every day we're hearing from small business owners who are telling us that their banks don't know how to access this money. They're trying to apply. They can't figure it out. So where does the fault lie? Does it lie with the banks?
I don't think there's a fault. They're doing record numbers of dollars. They're dealing with many community banks. They're dealing with Bank of America, Citibank, a lot of Wells Fargo, as you know, is very much involved. And they're dealing with the bankers. Can't go that quickly, but I'm hearing it's a very, very successful rollout. They did want changes in applications. They want changes in loan requirements, et cetera. But they're taking billions and billions of dollars worth of loans. And in the very near future, the banks will be relieving the money. They'll be paying out the money. Yeah, please.
Thank you very much, sir. Are you still expecting the USMCA to take effect on July 1st? And considering the fact that the auto industry is hurting these days, are you ready to postpone the...
well, we have a deal. Yeah, the deal is with Canada. The deal is with Mexico. We have a deal. And obviously, the deal is different from the standpoint that production will be lower. But we have a deal. It's a signed deal. It's a deal that's one of the worst deals that we've ever had was NAFTA, one of the worst trade deals ever made by any country anywhere. And we'll be terminating that. And the new deal is a great deal for our country. So that's something. Now, again, we get hit by the virus, and we'll see where that all goes. But certainly car production is going to be down for a little while. But ultimately, good for our farmers, great for our farmers. We'll be helping our farmers, by the way. We have money going out to our farmers in the pretty near future having to do with, you see what's happened. The farmers got hurt very badly by all of this. People are eating less from the standpoint that there's no restaurants are open, no businesses are open, no hotels are open. They'll start to come back, but we're going to be helping out our farmers. Yeah, please.
the new
Thank you, sir. Philip Wegman, Real Clear Politics. Earlier, you mentioned Project Skybridge, and we're hearing that through that project, a lot of the PPE that was sent out to other countries is coming back to this country. Do you know when we will be
Good day, I'm Norman Walker. In today's video, we want to look at roots of unity, which are ostensibly complex numbers which are equally spaced around the unit circle, which obey a seemingly remarkable algebraic property. These are kind of mainstays of field theory related to things called cyclotomic fields, which actually play quite an important role in abstract algebra. This is a good example, a very explicit kind of situation where we can see that we need to separate things which are currently fused together. We have to think in a little more organized way. So the context is the unit circle viewed inside the complex numbers. So here's the number 1, and here is the number I. And there's the unit circle given by x squared plus y squared equals 1. Or in complex analysis terms, the points z, or complex number z, whose quadrants qz equals 1. And I remind you that the quadrants of a complex number a plus bi is defined to be a squared plus b squared. And the absolute value of a complex number doesn't really play any role in algebra. Now, if we want to get at the unit circle from an algebraic point of view, we probably know, I hope, what to do. What we need is a rational parameterization, which is a way of describing points on the circle purely algebraically. And here it is, in terms of complex numbers, that e of t is 1 minus t squared over 1 plus t squared plus 2t over 1 plus t squared times I. So we're rewriting something that I hope is quite familiar to you because I talk about it quite a lot, the importance of being able to describe points on the unit circle algebraically with this as the x-coordinate and this as the y-coordinate. So we're rewriting that now in terms of a complex number. This is an algebraic way, and it's far superior to the cosine theta sine theta picture for most applications. Not all, but for most applications, especially geometrical and algebraic ones. Now, from the fundamental relation that q of zw equals q of z times q of w, is a basic aspect of quadrats for complex numbers, we can deduce that the product of two unit complex numbers is going to be another unit complex number. So if we have 2 points on the unit circle, and we think of them as complex numbers, and we take the product, z times w, then the new number that we get also has quadrants 1, so it will also lie on the circle. Which brings us to a very natural and interesting question. If our first number is, say, e of t, that's the parameter, and the second number is e of r, then first of all, geometrically, where should the product be? And another kind of question is, how do we describe this position algebraically as well as geometrically? So where is e of t times e of r, both geometrically and algebraically?
Searching for a second. Look, the mistakes I make are mistakes. And some people think I still stutter. I don't think of myself that way.
We cannot let this, we've never allowed any crisis from the Civil War straight through to the pandemic of 17, all the way around 16. We have never let our democracy take second fiddle. We can both have a democracy and elections and
This was the Spanish flu of 1918, the deadliest pandemic of the 20th century. Epidemics have infected societies throughout history. Usually epidemics come and go, but some truly stand out for their viciousness. In recent history, there has been no pandemic more devastating than the flu of 1918, sometimes called the Spanish flu, or swine flu. It killed about 675,000 in the United States alone. The outbreak came in the midst of World War I, and the flu would actually kill more troops than combat. The flu of 1918 was so deadly it killed more Americans than World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. The Spanish flu was horrifying for even more reasons. It was very contagious, and it killed extremely quickly, sometimes in as few as 12 hours. It killed people in the prime of their lives, with most victims being young, healthy people aged 20 to 40. Additionally, it killed some of its victims in bizarre, brutal ways, completely unlike typical flu virus. Some symptoms actually closely resembled the plagues, which killed millions in the Middle Ages. But scientists have analyzed the pathogen's genome and verified it was not Black Death, which killed millions in 1918. It was just the flu. This video will cover how the flu began and how it spread across the world, the bizarre symptoms that made it so deadly, and how the flu pushed society to the very brink of collapse. The epidemic continues. Its mathematical rate of acceleration, civilization could easily disappear from the face of the earth within a few weeks. Victor Vaughan, Surgeon General of the Army, October 1918. No one can be absolutely sure where the pandemic originated, but there are several theories. In northern France, there was an outbreak of a flu-like disease at a British military base in 1917. The base was located in a swampy area with lots of waterfowl and pigs. New flu epidemics often arise when people have close contact with sick birds or pigs. There was a separate outbreak of respiratory disease among soldiers from Southeast Asia who fought in World War I from 1916 to 1918. Most flus start in Southeast Asia, and some historians argue the soldier may have brought a new virus to Europe. But historian John Barry makes the case in his fascinating book, The Great Influenza, that the flu may have originated on a farm in rural Kansas by jumping from infected pigs to humans. Indeed, the first officially recognized cases of the Spanish flu emerged at a military base in Kansas. The U.S. had just ended World War I, and training and industry had ramped up at a rapid pace as the war machine fired up. But in rural Haskell County, Kansas, a war of another type was quietly beginning. Haskell County was in the grip of a deadly outbreak of what seemed to be a mysterious new disease. People in the community, farmers mostly, may have caught the new disease when a pathogen from sick pigs jumped species and began infecting humans. The new virus, the swine flu, was shockingly contagious and extremely deadly. A local doctor was terrified by the death toll of the new virus and contacted the U.S. Public Health Service for advice. His concern was noted, but nothing else was done. After all, it was a tiny rural backwater. How could it spread far in such a sparsely populated area? Slowly the virus began to die down as it ran out of new people to infect. Perhaps it would have stopped there had the times been different, but 1918 was the perfect breeding ground for a worldwide pandemic. In early 1918, every military base was teeming with young men training for war. The military hurried to build new barracks, hospitals, training areas, and facilities to support the influx of hundreds of thousands of men. Some of these men were volunteers, and some had been drafted. The strange new disease was just dying down in Haskell County when a few young men left there, headed to Camp Funston, Kansas, for training. Camp Funston, located at modern-day Fort Riley, was already over capacity, with 56,000 young men training for war. There hadn't been time to build enough barracks for all of them. It was the coldest winter on record east of the Rockies, yet many men were sleeping in tents without any heat and only thin blankets. In an effort to keep them all warm, the commander ordered all the men to move into barracks, violating the health and safety rules that dictated how much space each soldier should have. Inside the barracks, men huddled around stoves trying to keep warm. The men from Haskell County must have crowded in close too, even as they began to cough and sneeze. That's all it took. In the overcrowded barracks, the flu spread rapidly. It only took 6 days for the outbreak to begin. The men from Haskell County arrived on February 28th. Less than 1 week later, men began flooding into sick call. Within just a few weeks, the flu swept across the base, sickening thousands and killing between 38 and 50. It was a high death rate for the flu, but it was nothing compared to what was coming next. The virus was about to mutate and become much, much worse. Flu viruses are constantly mutating, and sometimes there will be a really big shift, or a virus that usually affects only animals mutates so it can infect people too. When that happens, it can be very deadly. The flu comes in waves. That's why we have a flu season. Although it may seem like a bad flu is done, the flu can hide for a while, or go infect people in a different part of the world and then return even worse. In the case of the 1918 flu, 3 waves of flu devastated the world. The first wave wasn't too bad, but the second and third waves were extremely dangerous. The outbreak at Camp Funston came just at the end of the flu season in the United States, so the first wave infected a lot of people, but then faded away. The military wasn't worried. They were grappling with a far more deadly outbreak of measles at the time. The flu virus seemed to fade away, but really it just went abroad to take on a world at war. It stalked into camp when the day was damp and chilly and cold, with a hand that was clammy and bony and bold, and its breath was icy and moldy and dank, and it killed so speedy and gloatingly greedy that it took away men from each company rank. The flu, Private Josh Lee, 1919. Nearly all the ships carrying American troops to war arrived at the port in Brest, France. In April of 1918, just as the flu outbreak was dying down at Camp Funston, an epidemic began in Brest and slowly began spreading throughout northern France. Despite the illness spreading in the city, more and more troops poured in. Healthy men would land, become infected, and then ship out to nudity stations and to the front line, carrying the disease through every small town and hamlet through which the armies traveled. The flu tore across France and followed the front lines into Belgium and the Netherlands. It jumped across the lines of war and began infecting the German army, actually affecting the outcomes of battle since so many troops were too sick to fight. It jumped from the German army to the German people. By May, it had reached Italy, or across the Mediterranean and surged into North Africa. It also arrived in England by May, riding back on boats with troops heading home. Infection and death rates began to skyrocket in Spain and Portugal. The flu gained its name, the Spanish flu, from the early infection and high mortality rate in Spain, where reported 8 million died in May. Spain was neutral in World War I, and as a result, it was one of the only countries that was reporting the news without strict government censorship. Most countries didn't want to reveal to their enemies that they were battling an epidemic, and didn't want to affect their people's morale, so the governments pressured the media to hide and downplay the severity of the virus. However, in neutral Spain, the press was free to report the news accurately. Newspaper headlines in Spain screamed of an epidemic that was killing millions, while other countries only whispered of the flu. The world believed the flu was worse in Spain, when in actuality, Spain was the only one talking about it at first. The flu continued spreading beyond Western Europe. By July, it had jumped to Scandinavia and Greece. The same month, the flu crept its way into a tense Russia, where the Tsar and his family had just been executed, and the Bolsheviks were battling with other factions to see who would control the future of Russia. A boat filled with 6 sailors arrived in Mumbai, India at the end of May. First, a few dock workers reported sick. Then workers at the next docks became ill, and then men at the nearby warehouses got sick, and so on, into the city. Ships left those same infested docks and spread to other ports in Asia. Sick people boarded trains in Mumbai and spread the disease like wildfire along railroad lines up into the subcontinent and continental Asia. The flu showed up in China around the same time, spreading inland from dock in Shanghai. By June, it arrived in Singapore, a world trade hub where the flu infected the dock workers and spread to the local population. From the bustling docks, sailors carried the flu south into Indonesia and north into Malaysia and Thailand, where it continued to spread. By July, it reached sub-Saharan Africa, with infected sailors who arrived at ports. It entered West Africa from ships arriving in Freetown, Sierra Leone. It infected Eastern Africa via the port in Mombasa, Kenya. Ships arriving into Cape Town, so the virus loose in South Africa. From these ports, influenza ripped its way across the continent, devastating the population. By July, it had also reached Peru and begun spreading across South America. By August, it had returned to North America. By October, it reached New Zealand and Japan. By November, a lethal outbreak was surging across Colombia, Argentina, Uruguay, and Chile. Despite quarantines on ships entering port, dock restrictions, and a concerted effort at containment, it finally spread into Australia by 1919. In less than a year, the deadly flu had surged around the world. The flu was able to spread so efficiently for many reasons, including the movement of vast companies of troops around the world, and the conditions those troops were living in. World War I was desperately brutal, and trench warfare made for horrific living conditions, and for a perfect breeding ground for disease. Men lived out in the open, with no protection from the freezing winter, the pounding rain, or the sweltering sun. Troops at the front lines lived in filthy trenches for months at a time, where they had to eat, sleep, and answer all the calls of nature within close contact with each other. When it rained, the trenches filled up with water that became rank and foul as it had nowhere to drain. Men's feet rotted in their boots, a condition called trench foot. Dead bodies lay decomposing in no man's land between the two armies. When it rained, water would wash excrement, decomposing body parts, and filth down to the trenches where the men lived. Constant bombing churned up the dirt and turned the ground into a sloppy swamp. The mud became so bad that in some places it was like quicksand.
Planks were laid down for the men to walk on. There were cases of horses, pack mules, and even soldiers slipping off the walkways and drowning in the mud before they could struggle out of their heavy gear. By the end of the war, over 9 million combatants and 7 million civilians would die in the war. Thus, it's not surprising that when a virulent new virus arrived, it became an even more deadly foe than the enemy soldiers. At some point, in the summer of 1918, the flu mutated to become more deadly. It gave some people the normal symptoms of fever, chills, nausea, aches, and diarrhea, and many got sick and recovered like a normal flu. Some were sick longer or died after catching a secondary infection, such as pneumonia. However, many people became violently ill with strange symptoms. In fact, in the July 1918 edition of the medical journal The Lancet, doctors argued that this strange epidemic couldn't be the flu because the symptoms didn't fit. Italian doctors argued the same. In some people, Spanish flu caused fevers that were so high people hallucinated. Some writhed in agonized muscle pain so bad that doctors thought they had dengue, also called breakbone fever. It made some people temporarily or even permanently blind, deaf, or paralyzed. Some lost the ability to smell. Some had strong vertigo and would fall over if they tried to walk. Extreme ear infections developed very quickly, going from the first pain to the eardrums rupturing within only a few hours. Some had terrible headaches and double vision. Severe mucus excretions and inflammation made it hard for victims to breathe. Some people coughed so hard they tore their abdominal muscles. Doctors doing autopsies saw lungs so damaged that they resembled those of people who died from poisonous gas in the war. Some people developed a symptom most physicians had never seen before. Tiny puffs of air would leak out from tears in the lungs and get trapped beneath the skin, puffing up in little pockets all over their bodies. When they moved, the pockets would crackle like a bowl of Rice Krispies, according to one nurse. Some people developed hemorrhagic fever, which, like Ebola, causes its victims to bleed. An Army report described the flu as a rapidly escalating infection and lungs choked with blood, fatal in from 24 to 48 hours. Some people bled from their nose, their ears, and their eyes. Some people with 1918 flu became so oxygen-starved they began to turn blue, or even look black, a condition called cyanosis. People reportedly turned so dark that it was difficult to distinguish white people from people of color. For this reason, the flu picked up the nickname the Blue Death, and many wondered if the Black Death had returned. When people began turning blue, doctors knew they wouldn't survive more than a few hours. The flu was also terrifying because it could kill so quickly. Many victims died within a day or two, or even hours of showing their first symptoms. According to a story recounted in the book The Great Influenza, a man in Cape Town, South Africa boarded a streetcar just as the conductor died. During the 3-mile ride to his house, 6 more people on the streetcar died. When the driver died, he got off the streetcar and walked home. We've had a number of cases where people were perfectly healthy and died within 12 hours. Charles Edward Winslow, epidemiologist and professor at Yale University. In late summer of 1918, the flu virus returned to America, but this time it was far more deadly. In August, a ship full of sick people arrived in New York City from Europe. 4 men had already died at sea, and 200 more people on the ship were sick. Many were taken to hospitals, but they weren't quarantined. In the following week, several more ships full of sick people arrived. The same was happening in other deep-water ports like Boston, Philadelphia, and New Orleans. At the same time as the virus was arriving and spreading in ports, ships left those same ports headed for Canada, Central America, the Caribbean, and South America, carrying infected people. In August September, there was an outbreak at Navy Pier in Boston. The pier was quarantined, but officers still moved between bases. An officer was probably responsible for carrying the flu to nearby Camp Devens. At first, just a few men reported sick, and then within only a few days, an epidemic broke out. By mid-September, thousands of men were sick, in many cases violently so. Of those who were sick, 75% were so ill they had to be hospitalized. The sheer number of patients overwhelmed the medical staff of the military hospital. The hospital had been designed to treat a maximum of 1,200 troops at one time, yet more than 6,000 patients were crammed in. Cots were stuffed into every available space, in hallways and offices, even on outdoor porches. The doctors and nurses felt ill. There were simply not enough healthy people to care for the thousands of sick people. So many died that they couldn't all fit in the hospital morgue. The dead were stacked up, one on top of another, like firewood in the hallway outside the morgue. Every day they were carted away, and every day the hall filled up again. The Army medical officers issued an order that no men should be sent to or shipped out of Camp Devens. However, that's not what happened. A group of officers left Camp Devens, headed to Camp Grant in Illinois. Despite the rules against it, the chief officer there had authorized overcrowding due to a shortage in barracks, once again giving the ideal environment for the disease to spread. Shortly after arriving, the officers from Camp Devens became sick. The men were quarantined, but it was already too late. Within 2 days of the first cases, the flu was widespread throughout the camp. Within 4 days of the first case, men started dying. Within 5 days, doctors and nurses became sick and started dying. By 6 days, there were 4,000 men admitted to the hospital, and they converted 10 barracks into temporary hospitals. By 7 days, they were running out of medicine, disinfectant, and other medical supplies. By 9 days, they converted 9 more barracks to service hospitals, bringing the number up to 20. They didn't have enough beds, sheets, or ambulances to carry all the infirm. When they ran out of beds, soldiers were ordered to stuff straw into sacks to use as mattresses for the sick. They still didn't have enough. They tried to make enough face cloths to cover people's mouths to fight the spread of germs, but they ran out of cloth. The Red Cross set up a station to notify relatives that their loved ones were dying or dead. Now relatives poured into the midst of a deadly epidemic. Healthy relatives were escorted by coughing service members to identify dead bodies in the morgue. They crowded into the overfilled hospitals to visit ill loved ones. Desperate parents and wives tried to bribe nurses and orderlies to give special care to their soldier. It became such a problem, the head officer issued a warning about accepting bribes. Those relatives would leave the camp and carry the infection out into the civilian community, into local towns, onto cross-country trains, and ultimately back to their hometowns. Civilian health officials called for emergency quarantine at Camp Grant, but the virus was already out. 4 days after the first reported case, a trainload of troops had left Camp Grant to go cross-country to Camp Hancock, near Augusta, Georgia. For the journey of almost 1,000 miles, the men were packed tightly into train cars with poor ventilation. In the tight quarters, men coughed, became feverish, and began bleeding from their eyes and ears. They infected each other swiftly, and the virus swept along the train. The train stopped repeatedly along the journey to refuel, and the men who could still walk got off the train to get a break from the hacking coughs of the sick and delirious men. There they interacted with railroad workers and curious locals who would come to see the troops. They infected town after town for almost 1,000 miles. When they finally arrived in Georgia, 2,000 of the 3,000 men were so sick they needed to be hospitalized immediately. They started a new outbreak at Camp Hancock. Historians don't know how many of the men from the train died, but one report from Fort Leonard Wood claims 10%. Yet when hundreds began dying, the medical staff of the hospital stopped keeping careful records. They were just too overwhelmed by all the dead. One robust person showed the first symptoms at 4 o'clock p.m. and died by 10 o'clock a.m. The Journal of the American Medical Association. The same thing would happen at bases across America. At Camp Custer in Michigan, 2,800 troops reported sick in a single day. At the same time, hundreds of thousands of troops were still shipping out to Europe. By this point, the government knew how dangerous the flu was, so they tried to contain the virus on ships. Visibly sick men were not allowed on the ships, but this didn't make much difference in the end. The flu virus incubates for a few days before any signs of infection are visible. On board the ships, the men were locked into their bunk rooms for most of the voyage across the sea, and armed military police enforced the segregation. On most ships, about 400 men were locked in each crowded bunk room in cramped quarters with little ventilation. Although the troops were segregated from others in the ship, they still shared the same mess hall where they all ate. They would file through, breathing the same air and touching the same tables and chairs as the group before. On one ship, called the Leviathan, the flu broke out almost immediately, despite the quarantine efforts. Within 2 days, it had overwhelmed the ship's medical services. The doctors and nurses were laid up sick alongside their patients, delirious, coughing, and blood pouring from their bodies. The blood pooled on the floor, and the nurses, who were still well enough to work, walked through the puddles, leaving bloody footprints on the deck. Finally, there were so many sick men that they began laying them on the deck of the ship out in the elements. They even lay there in storms, because the well were too overwhelmed to move them, and the ill were too sick to move themselves. At first, the deaths came spaced apart, and the officers took careful notes in the captain's log of the Leviathan. At first, they wrote the date and time of death, the name and rank of the deceased, their unit and cause of death. But only 1 week after leaving New York, the officers were so overwhelmed they wrote only name and time of death. The captain's log shows 2 deaths at 2 a.m., 1 at 2:02 a.m., 2 at 2:15 a.m. It continued like that around the clock. The Helpy must have been terrified, locked onto a ship filled with a deadly plague with nowhere to escape. They began burying them at sea. At first, they were solemn ceremonies, but after so many, the funerals became routine. They would read a name, say a brief prayer, and slide the body off the boat, then on to the next. The same was happening in every boat carrying troops across the ocean. Medical advisors begged the military to stop the troop movements, but the war machine needed men. At the same time, it was infecting the civilian population from port to port and along the railway lines. However, the very worst outbreak probably occurred in Philadelphia, and it was made immeasurably worse by mismanagement by leaders who ignored warnings from public health doctors. Had public health measures been implemented, perhaps much of the death and suffering could have been avoided. Philadelphia in 1918 was teeming with people. Hundreds of thousands had swarmed the city because of the new job opportunities working at steel plants, docks, railroad yards, and industries that supplied the war. Without enough housing for the influx, poor people were crowded into squalid, filthy slums that lacked indoor plumbing. Multiple families would cram into one apartment and share an outhouse in an alleyway with hundreds of people. Sometimes people shared not only apartments but beds, even sleeping in shifts. The boarding houses would rent out beds for 6 or 8 hours at a time. When one worker woke up to go to work, another worker would get into the newly vacated bed and sleep, same sheets and all. The streets were notoriously filthy, with rat infestations and gutters filled with trash, animal, and even human feces. With people living in overcrowded conditions, exhausted from hard labor and weak from poor nutrition, dirty water, and bad air quality, it was a perfect breeding ground for an epidemic. I had a little bird. Its name was Enza. I opened the window, and influenza. Children's Jump Roping Song, 1918. A ship full of 6 sailors arrived into the Philadelphia Navy Yard in mid-September. Within a few days, the Navy hospital was overrun, and the Navy began sending sailors to civilian hospitals in the city. As sailors began dying, flu spread to civilians. 2 days after the first sailor arrived at the hospital, multiple doctors and nurses felt fine as they started their shifts, yet collapsed and became desperately ill within hours. However, the health board for the city didn't want people to panic. They downplayed the severity of the disease. After the death of several sailors and civilians, the health board confidently declared the disease had reached its zenith and already begun to decline. It hadn't even gotten started. At the same time, the federal government was desperate for money from war bonds to fund the war. People would buy bonds, essentially loaning the government money for a promise of being paid back later with interest. Every city had a quota of bonds they had to sell, and Philadelphia was ready to hold the Liberty Loan Parade to sell war bonds. Public health doctors begged the city to cancel the parade, terrified that it would cause the outbreak to become an epidemic. The city government ignored them. On September 28th, hundreds of thousands of people jammed into the downtown streets to watch the parade. In that huddled crowd, all crushed together, it only took a few coughing, sneezing people to launch the epidemic. Within 76 hours, just 3 days later, the city's 31 hospitals had run out of bed space. They were completely full. Some hospitals tried to cram in more by laying patients on cots in the hallways, in offices, on balconies. In some cases, the sick were laid on the floor next to a dying patient. Once the patient died, the body was taken away, and the new patient would be lifted into the same bed, still warm from the previous occupant. The city opened several temporary emergency hospitals, but it wasn't enough. Hospitals started refusing to accept any more patients. People lined up outside begging to be let in. Some died standing in line. Even for those who got in, care was non-existent for most people. The hospitals ran out of medicine. The doctors and nurses were overtaxed, and they were dropping from the flu. They were desperate for help. People with no medical training volunteered. Physicians and nurses came out of retirement. Medical schools closed, and first-year medical students were put in charge of the entire floor of a hospital. One medical student reported that during the height of the outbreak, 1/4 of all the patients in the hospital died every day. Nurses were so overtaxed, they began adding toe tags to the living so they could tag several at once. Once a patient turned blue, it was only a matter of hours to death, so they felt confident in tagging them. Sometimes there wasn't any time for any intervention. Some people died within 24 hours of contracting the flu. A nurse at Mount Sinai Hospital started her shift in the morning and suddenly fell ill. She died 12 hours after first feeling sick. The number of dead kept growing. 5 days after the city held the Liberty Loan Parade, city leaders finally acted. The health department banned all public meetings. Churches, schools, and theaters were closed. They left the bars open, but those too were closed the next day. The courts closed and city services shut down. It took only a few days for the city's operations to completely grind to a halt. Within just 10 days, Philadelphia went from a few hundred cases of flu and a couple deaths per day to hundreds of thousands of people sick and hundreds dying every day, all because they ignored public health guidelines. By 3 weeks after the parade, the death toll stood at 4,500. So many died that they couldn't be buried fast enough. Gravediggers were sick or refused to bury flu victims. The bodies started piling up inside morgues and funeral homes. Some undertakers raised their prices 500% to try and cash in. Most ran out of coffins. One funeral home that hadn't run out hired guards because people were trying to steal the coffins. People began wrapping their dead in blankets or sewing together flour sacks to use as shrouds. No one came to take the bodies, and there was nowhere to bring them, so the dead stayed in the homes. People wrapped them in blankets and set them in closed-off rooms. The bodies were laid on porches or stacked in back alleys. In the poor, overcrowded tenement houses where multiple families lived in one apartment, there were no porches or spare rooms to put the bodies. They set them in the corners or stacked them in alleyways next to the shared outhouses and drinking water pumps. Sometimes, people were so sick that the person in bed next to them would die, and they couldn't gather the strength to take the body away. The city began to smell, the stench of death hanging heavily in the air. Finally, families began digging their own graves to bury their dead. Everyone was terrified. People avoided each other. There were cases of children whose parents got sick, and the children starved because no one would go near them in case the child was sick. This was particularly a problem, since those who were most likely to die were people aged between 20 to 40, many of them parents. People couldn't get food because no trucks were delivering goods in the city. The streets fell silent. Every business was closed. People hid inside their homes. The streetcars stopped. The police cars stopped. The entire city ceased to function. You were constantly afraid. You were afraid because you saw so much death around you. You were surrounded by death. When each day dawned, you didn't know whether you would be there when the sun set that day. You wiped out entire families from the time the day began in the morning to bedtime at night. There wasn't any single soul left. William Sardo, Washington, D.C. The Philadelphia city government was by now non-functional. Wealthy Philadelphia families appealed to the federal government for help, but there was no help to send. Cities all across America were buckling beneath the weight of the epidemic, and the federal government was busy managing the outbreak on military bases and among troops in Europe. With the city government failing to act, the women of elite Philadelphia families, many of the same who had organized the Liberty Loan Parade, banded together to start outreach efforts. They gathered together civic leaders from across the city to start planning. They set up a special hotline to answer questions about the flu, but had a hard time keeping it staffed because so many employees were sick. They set up local neighborhood leaders who would organize distribution of food and medical care. They set up soup kitchens in schools and food delivery to sick people when possible. 500 people volunteered their cars to be used as ambulances and to deliver food and drive doctors around to treat the sick. However, there was a desperate need for more volunteers, and most people were too afraid to get involved. Leaders begged for more help, but people turned away. the fabric of society began to break down. City leaders who hadn't bothered to attend meetings of the outreach effort finally got involved. They seized the city's emergency fund to pay for supplies and pay health workers. They opened additional morgues and sent out policemen to try and clear the piled up bodies. Like the ancient plagues, people carried their dead out to the streets. There, the bodies were loaded onto open trucks or horse-drawn wagons. There were no coffins, so they stacked them one on top of the other. Also, like in the days of the plague, they stopped trying to bury people individually and began digging mass graves where hundreds of bodies were dumped in. The city used construction equipment to dig long trenches and push the bodies in. Someone would stand by the trench, say a prayer, and then the steam shovels would push dirt over the piles of bodies. By late October, the epidemic was finally beginning to loosen the death grip on the city. In its aftermath, it left a death toll of 13,000. It also left thousands of orphaned children, a shortage of food and goods, and a stalled city that had to slowly grind its most basic services back into motion. Finally, it left a changed people, filled with fear, wearied by war and disease, and crushed by grief. The people of Phoenix are facing a crisis. Almost every home in the city has been stricken with the plague. Arizona Republican, November 8, 1918. In other cities and towns across America, the news was the same. In New York City, 33,000 people died before the statisticians stopped counting. Some small towns tried to keep the virus out by quarantining themselves. They shut down all businesses and canceled public gatherings. People were ordered to stay in their homes and not touch or visit others. Some towns made it illegal to shake hands. In other towns, police were dispatched to nail signs on the doors of homes where people were sick. The sign said, influenza, in red letters. Rumors spread in Phoenix, Arizona, that dogs spread the disease. Policemen killed dogs in the streets, and people killed their own pets. Towns in Colorado set up barricades on the roads, and men guarded them with shotguns, preventing anyone from coming in. Other towns couldn't stop the trains from rolling through on their local platforms, but they refused to let anyone step off the trains. Anyone who did was thrown in prison and quarantined. It didn't work. The virus still slipped in. The only place that escaped the worst of the rap was San Francisco, and historians credit that to aggressive response by the local government, who listened to the public health officials. Public health director William Hassler quarantined all naval stations before they had any reported cases. He knew it was only a matter of time. He ordered all public schools and gathering places closed. He divided the cities into separate districts with distinct support staff so as to segregate outbreaks. He laid out plans and organized a flu response before the flu ever hit the city so they would be ready when it did. The city's government, medical, and civic organizations banded together to educate citizens on prevention such as hand washing, avoiding public places, and wearing a face mask. While Philadelphia's government was still denying there was a problem, San Francisco authorities were distributing 100,000 face masks. Police enforced the face mask rule at gunpoint and actually shot people who refused to wear masks in the streets. As the second wave diminished throughout the country, San Francisco rejoiced for having missed the flu. The flu would mutate once more and rage through the world for a third time, but infecting and killing fewer people. This time it would be less severe. This time it did hit San Francisco because they thought the flu was already over. The third wave hit the Southwest and Midwest hard, but for the rest of America, the worst of the flu had passed. Even as America woke from the nightmare, the epidemic had left its imprint. Right at the height of harvest time, farmers had been too sick to farm, and workers didn't show up to gather the food in. Food that was harvested rotted in warehouses because there was no one to transport it. There was a lag while the country tried to catch up on shipping food and goods, and store shelves and markets stayed empty for some time because goods hadn't been delivered. As winter rolled in, there was a shortage of coal and other goods. However, the weary country still rejoiced, for an armistice was signed on November 11, 1918. The war was finally over, even as the plague and its effects lingered on. In the U.S., it killed about 675,000. The flu killed an estimated 3% of the entire world population. In Latin America, the flu killed 10 out of every 1,000 people. In Africa, about 15 out of every 1,000 died. And in parts of Asia, the death rate was as high as 35 per thousand. In Tahiti, it killed 10% of the population. And in Western Samoa, 20% of the population died. In India alone, it killed about 20 million people. You may be asking yourself, would a deadly flu like that happen again? It's important to understand that the Spanish flu was devastating for a number of reasons unique to that time. However, the essential formula for epidemics still exists. Viruses sometimes jump species, for instance from pigs to human. This could happen at any time, anywhere in the world. And of course, flu viruses are constantly mutating. Usually mutations are minor, but occasionally big mutations can happen. This has happened a few times in recent history. For instance, the Russian flu of 1889 killed about 1 million people. The Asian flu of 1957 killed about 2 million. And the Hong Kong flu of 1968 also killed about 2 million. Then in 2018, exactly 100 years after the outbreak of Spanish flu, a mutation brought a particularly deadly flu to the US and Australia. As of 2018, there's one strain of avian flu, an H5 type, that has managed to infect humans, but so far cannot jump between people. However, that particular strain of flu is frightening in its potential, according to Donald Burke, MD, former director of the Johns Hopkins Center for Immunization Research. Of the people who have been infected, it has been deadly in over 75% of cases. If that type of flu adapted to human-to-human infection, it could be catastrophic. So could it happen again? Yes, it could. As Burke said, when it comes to the probability of a pandemic flu, I think everyone would say it's not if, it's when. However, there's reason to be hopeful. When a new kind of flu emerged in 2009, a swine flu, just like the Spanish flu, officials did not waste any time acting. Public health officials acted swiftly, putting emergency epidemic plans into operation. We were lucky that the 2009 swine flu, though very contagious, was not a deadly strain, and it showed us that response matters a great deal. In fact, the way we respond to the next big epidemic could mean the difference between life or death. If you enjoyed this video, please click like and subscribe to Education World for more videos.
The Berlin Wall was continually upgraded and reinforced over its 28-year history. Where you're standing now is the wall's most gruesome feature, the Death Strip. This is the border in the 1980s, at its most advanced. A team of 14,000 crack-shot guards keep watch. 302 sniper towers, and 600 attack dogs add to the menace. In front of you, vehicle blockers, known as Czech hedgehogs, prevent any kind of vehicle from smashing through. Guards have orders to shoot on sight. It's eerily empty here, and it's deliberate. If you can be seen, you can be shot. The death strip is a state-sponsored killing machine. If you tried standing here in the heyday of the wall, you'd be shot in seconds. This is the true horror of the Berlin Wall. But by November 1989, the nightmare is over. Look around you. You're standing in West Berlin, just 100 meters or so from the Brandenburg Gate. On the evening of November the 9th, 1989, thousands gather here. Under huge political pressure, East German officials have just announced that the border between East and West Berlin will be opened for the first time in 28 years. In an incredible moment, ordinary people start tearing down the wall. And as you see, entire sections begin to give way. The East German guards behind simply look on, unsure what to do. Berlin descends into a state of mass celebration. Amongst the revelers is a 17-year-old college student called Wolfgang, here in front of you. He and his friends have been partying through the night, and in the morning, he's handed the German flag. In an iconic moment, celebrating freedom, he's photographed holding it aloft. It's an enduring symbol of reunification. The brutal wall that divided families, destroyed lives, and robbed East Germans of their basic liberty was no more. The East German guards behind simply look on, unsure what to do. Berlin descends into a state of mass celebration. Amongst the revelers is a 17-year-old college student called Wolfgang, here in front of you. He and his friends have been partying through the night, and in the morning, he's handed the German flag. In an iconic moment, celebrating freedom, he's photographed holding it aloft. It's an enduring symbol of reunification. The brutal wall that divided families, destroyed lives, and robbed East Germans of their basic liberty was no more.
we could get one test. So I tested myself. It came back a week later, positive, and I knew it. I already knew it. I knew that that's what it was going to say. I woke up in the middle of the night and couldn't breathe, and I needed a nebulizer for the first time in 30 years. At one point, when he started throwing up and saying that he had chest pains and that it hurt to breathe, that's the point where you just kind of like, okay, are we going to the hospital? Like, what are we doing right now? Because this is the scariest thing I've ever been through in my whole life. It's very controversial to people that I was able to get my hands on a test. I would say you should be angry that I can get a test and you can't. But being angry at me is not going to help anything. It's not going to solve the issue of the fact that you can't get your hands on a test. You should be angry about that. And we should work together to try and change that.
As coronavirus was silently racing around the world in late January and early February, the federal government not only failed to use the massive arsenal of hundreds of laboratories across the United States for emergency testing, it actually left roadblocks in place to prevent non-government labs from assisting. That is according to documents obtained by CNN and interviews with more than a dozen scientists and physicians involved in coronavirus testing.
At the very beginning of this pandemic, it was the federal government that had the sole ability to do the testing and made it very difficult for private labs, for university labs to make their own tests based on certain regulatory hurdles.
Several hospital and university-based labs have told CNN they saw the pandemic approaching, were developing their own tests as early as January to detect the virus. But the red tape with the FDA's regulatory process prevented them from moving forward, meaning labs sat idle.
Rather than enlisting the tremendous strength and power of the U.S. laboratory capacity, getting everybody working on this and creating tests and having widespread test availability, we had CDC trying to keep running everything by itself.
The federal government was prepared to enforce the rules, sending this memo on February 6, telling state health departments to actively police against labs using their own coronavirus tests. The reasoning behind the tight regulations were good, assure the safety and efficacy of tests. But Dr. Glenn Morris of the University of Florida says the FDA rules were written for normal situations, not a crisis.
When we suddenly hit the point where we were looking at China and seeing what was going on there, what we needed was extremely aggressive leadership. We've got to move fast because otherwise we're going to run into a problem.
The problem developed as soon as the CDC rolled out its own test for verification. It didn't work, and weeks were lost as the CDC scrambled to make a new test.
So